What happened to the lunch counter? Why they vanished from American life? You pull open a glass door and a small bell rings above your head. The air smells like coffee and something frying, bacon maybe, or the warm, flat surface of a grilled cheese. You take a seat on a round stool that swivels just slightly under your weight. You rest your elbows on a counter that is cool and smooth, pale formica or worn wood with a thin chrome edge running along the front. A woman in a white uniform and a small apron comes over without being asked. She sets down a paper placemat and a glass of water with ice, and she looks at you the way someone looks at you when they already know what you probably want. That was the lunch counter, and for most of America, it is gone. The short answer is that it was replaced by fast food chains, by food courts, by the kind of hurried cafeteria logic that came to define a different era. But the longer answer is more interesting and more worth sitting with, because what disappeared was not just a place to eat, it was a particular kind of pause in the middle of an ordinary day. To understand what the lunch counter was, you have to slow down and picture where it lived. It was almost never a restaurant on its own. It sat inside something else. Inside a Woolworths 5 and dime, inside a drugstore, inside a department store, a hardware shop, a bus station, or a hotel lobby. It occupied one wall or one corner, often shaped like an L, running maybe 20 or 30 feet of stools in a single row. Behind the counter, everything was visible: the griddle, the coffee urns, the pie case with the spinning glass dome, the small refrigerator with the sliding door. There was nothing hidden. The cook worked right in front of you, and you watched your food become food. The menu was short by design: soup of the day, a few sandwiches, a hot plate that changed through the week, meatloaf on Monday, maybe beef stew by Thursday. Pie was almost always available. Coffee was refilled without asking. The prices were low enough that a factory worker, a secretary, a schoolteacher, or a traveling salesman could all sit down and eat a full midday meal for well under $1 through most of the 1940s and 1950s. What made it different from a diner or a cafe was the context. You did not go to the lunch counter the way you went out to eat. You went because you were already there, already in the drugstore picking up a prescription, already in Woolworths buying thread or school supplies or a birthday card. The lunch counter caught you in the middle of something else, and that incidental quality was part of the charm. It was not an occasion, it was simply part of the day. The people who worked those counters were almost always women, and they were skilled in a way that is easy to underestimate. A busy lunch counter ran on efficiency and memory. A good counter waitress might be managing 8 or 10 customers at once, all at different stages of their meals, all with small requests and quiet needs. She knew the regulars by name. She knew what they drank. She knew when to refill and when to leave someone alone. The social intelligence that kind of work required was real, and most of the women who did it were proud of doing it well. Regulars came every day. There were people who ate at the same stool, ordered the same thing, and exchanged the same few words with the same woman for years. The lunch counter was, in this way, a form of community, narrow and quiet and easy to overlook, but genuine. For a lot of people who lived alone or who worked long hours in noisy buildings, it was one of the few moments in the day when someone looked them in the eye and handed them something warm. The decline began gradually, and it came from several directions at once. The 5 and dime stores that housed so many lunch counters started struggling in the late 1960s. Discount retailers were undercutting their prices. Suburban shopping malls were pulling foot traffic away from downtown main streets. When the stores weakened, the counters inside them weakened too. At the same time, the fast food industry was expanding at a pace that is hard to fully appreciate now. McDonald's, Burger King, and their competitors were not just offering cheap food, they were offering a system, a consistent product, no tipping, no waiting for a stool to open up. You could eat in your car, The simplicity of a drive-through window was designed to feel like convenience, and for a culture moving faster and spreading outward into suburbs built around the automobile, it worked. The economics of the lunch counter also became harder to sustain. Labor costs rose, health code regulations grew more complex. The small operators, the drugstore owners who ran a six-stool counter as a side service, found that the margin on a bowl of soup and a cup of coffee barely justified the overhead, the equipment, the staffing, the food waste. It added up. For many small businesses, closing the counter was simply the practical decision. Woolworths, which had operated one of the largest networks of lunch counters in the country, closed its remaining American stores in 1997. It was the end of a particular era in retail, and the lunch counters went with it, mostly unremarked. What replaced them was not one thing, but a category: the fast casual transaction, the food court in the mall, the national chain with the laminated menu and the numbered receipt, the place where no one knows your name, not because they are unfriendly, but because the system was never designed to hold that information. The food is often fine, the prices are sometimes comparable, but something in the texture of the experience is different, and most people who remember the lunch counter can feel that difference, even if they have trouble naming it. What was lost, specifically, was the quality of being received, of walking into a place mid-errand and being recognized as a regular person who was hungry, and having someone take quiet care of that. The lunch counter did not ask you to perform enthusiasm or navigate a screen. It just set down a glass of water, handed you a short menu, and gave you somewhere to be for 20 minutes in the middle of the day. That is a small thing, perhaps, but small things are often the ones that quietly held daily life together, and their absence, felt over decades, adds up to something larger than any individual loss. If you remember sitting at a lunch counter, the swivel of the stool, the sound of the griddle, the coffee that came back before you asked for it, feel free to share that memory in the comments. And if this is the first you've heard of them, I hope it gave you a sense of what ordinary American life once held that it no longer does. If you would like to see more videos like this one, subscribing means a great deal. There are many more quiet corners of the American past worth remembering, and we'll keep looking for them together.